right, excellent. So the next thing that I would tell you is please don't be offended. I am going to, if you're on the phone, I'm going to mute your phone because I just want to make sure we don't have any background noise. Those types of things tend to come through, echoes and all that. If you have a question or a comment, by all means, please add those directly into the instant message conversation or take yourself off of mute and interrupt me at any time. I have no problem with this or with that happening. So basically, for any of you who've been on my presentations before, I can talk for an hour almost without taking a breath, and I'm happy to do so, but this will be far more valuable to you if you ask the questions as we go along. We do all kinds of just sort of presentations, and I really would rather this not be a presentation, but instead more of an interactive Q&A session to make sure I cover whatever's important to you guys. So with that said, I'm actually going to start kind of the presentation portion of this, but again, by all means, please just interrupt me at any time as it makes sense to you to do so. So let me open this up. So as I stated, my name is Preston Piney, and I am a technology strategist with Microsoft US Education. So I work across about 6 separate states. Many of you I know, we've worked together before, either over the phone or in person. Some of you I haven't, so it's nice to virtually meet you. What we're going to talk about today is Office 365 Pro Plus. So there is a little bit of a difference between Office 365, Office 365 Pro Plus, and Office 2010 or 2013. And so my slide deck doesn't necessarily go in depth with all of that, but we do discuss it a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this to remove any of the confusion. So I'm also going to state up front, I should have probably said this very first, that this is intended for IT pros. If you are not some kind of a technical nerd, I might get a little bit deep for you today. You're welcome to stay on, but just be comfortable with the fact that I'm going to start talking about XML files and software deployment and all that kind of fun stuff here just shortly. So the first thing I want to do is clarify the differences here. Most of us have been working with Microsoft Office products for decades, and we're very comfortable with deploying these MSI files and applying a MAC key or using a KMS server to deploy the licensing keys to that software once it gets pushed out. And that's our volume licensing model. We use an MSI file. Many of you use Config Manager or some other third-party tool to push those apps out. And what we're going to talk about today is a completely new approach to doing that. That's sort of in addition to, in some cases, it's in lieu of Office 2013 Pro Plus deployment. So as we go through this, I will refer to this as Pro Plus. And when I do, what I'm talking about is the specifically Office 365 Pro Plus, or the click to run version. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is the always current, right, the evergreen subscription to Microsoft Office. And so what that really is it's always the latest build of Office that's available to you. So historically speaking, what happened was, as let's say Office 2010 would be released, we would immediately start the development of a new version of Office, right? We'd spend the next about 18 months working through all of that, creating all the initial code, and then we would go into, internal testing, and then eventually into betas and previews and those types of things. And another 18 months later, we would go ahead and release that out to the public. So that's why there's about a 3-year gap historically between Office releases, right? We had this sort of cadence that we went through on a regular basis. The truth is that the modern world has changed your end user's expectation of what innovation in technology should look like. In particular, they've become very used to the fact that their mobile phone constantly has apps being updated. They're always getting some new little piece of innovation and don't hardly even think twice about it. And as a matter of fact, they've come to really expect that more and more, rather than working on a piece of software that in many cases is 6 to 7 years old. So a good example of that, which is very common in education. So, you guys probably read in my invitation, I was a K-12 tech director for many years, up until about a year ago when I came here. And I can tell you that it is very common in education, whether you do this or not, to come up to something like Office 2010 and decide, you know what, we're gonna skip that release and we'll wait till 2013 comes out. Everybody's pretty happy with 2007. We'll just stay with '07 until the next version comes. And so what's really happening is I talked about that 3-year deployment cadence, and if you skip a version, that's about a 6-year gap between when that technology was first when that innovation was initially conceived and we began developing it until you actually got it in the hands of end users, right? From the time that we launched the 2007 version until the 2013 version became available. And so the issue is for end users, that upgrade process is a nightmare for them. It's actually quite a scary thing in the fact that you guys have probably read the book Who Moved My Cheese, right? The general concept being I'm very comfortable with this. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. I know where it all is. And if you change it, that makes me uncomfortable in some way. And so that's what we would see even as we went from major version to major version, but especially if you skipped one. And I tend to explain this kind of as a likening to walking up to a cliff face on a mountain and trying to decide how am I going to scale that sheer rock wall. That's kind of the idea of how am I going to get from Office 2007 to 2013 versus if we start looking at Office 365 Pro Plus, it's like putting in a set of stairs to get there. What we're really going to do is approximately every month, we're going to come out with a new upgrade to Microsoft Office that's very iterative, right? So I call it iterative innovation. We're just constantly trickling in new pieces of innovation so that it's less disruptive to the end user. So instead of this fear of how do I scale the sheer rock wall, they just simply continue up the steps little by little, hardly noticing any change as they go. Part of the reason why they don't notice that as much as you might expect is because, if you think about it, I tell people, Microsoft Office Professional suite of products is kind of like the human brain. If you use more than 10% of it, your head might explode. It's really that kind of, there are so many features and so much functionality and so much capability inside of the entire suite that I don't know of a single person, and I know some really great Office experts, but I don't know of a single person who really uses every feature of every product that's part of Office. And so I say that so that you understand as we look at moving from or moving forward with each new monthly or frequent build of Office Pro Plus that comes out, that's going to be a very minor impact to any one user because the odds are most of the innovation that comes out are not going to deal with most of your users at any given time, right? One or two of them might be affected with an innovation inside of Excel. One or two may be affected by the innovation in Word. And so you kind of get the idea of how this becomes a very iterative process that's very minor. And even when we do add a new button, people go, oh, that's cool, look at that. And then they just kind of either assimilate it into the way that they do work because it has value to them, or continue to ignore it until they need it, just like they do so many other features today. So those are kind of the key differences between the volume license version of Office 2013 and the click-to-run version of Office 365 Pro Plus, which I will refer to as Pro Plus throughout most of this demo. And I think the other major thing I want to make sure that I mention is if you look at this slide over on the far right-hand side is the servicing. So with Office 2013, Pro Plus, 2010, all those, that was a very layered or additive, as they call it, approach to maintaining or upgrading or patching that software, right? So what would happen is you would take the time to install Office onto a brand new machine. Maybe you push that out in some way. And then what happens is you now have a list of perhaps 15 or 20 new updates that need to go on top of that, depending on the how long it's been since that initial install came out. So you start pushing all these other patches on top of it. And so what you end up with is this 30-minute plus installation cycle where you've installed the software, now you've pushed all the updates to it, and then you're gonna keep sort of adding new updates to it, which also means that if something comes along that somehow causes a disruption, so you push out a patch, or a critical update, and you push out an update, and in some way that update causes you an issue, you don't have a good way to roll back, right, to the previous version before you put that on. What's great about Office 365 Pro Plus is you're actually going to find out that you have far more control over updates, because not only can you move forward or choose not to move forward, but you can also move back. And we're going to get more into that, but the key here is to understand you are never more than one update away from the current version of Office. So if I tell all of my machines that I want to install the November release of Office Pro Plus and don't run updates automatically, then whenever I'm ready to run the update, let's say the May update comes out and I'm ready to push that update, and the last one I had was November, no problem. It's just one update cycle. It's not layered. I'm going to run one update against it, and it's actually going to be able to just pull whatever the differential bits are down and install those directly. So we'll get more into that as we go on, but the big differences here are the way that the licenses are perpetual subscription in Pro Plus, and the fact that the builds are slipstreamed. There are a couple other things that you need to know about before I move on. Number one is that from a licensing standpoint in education, if you purchase Microsoft Office for your faculty and staff based upon their FTE count as part of your enterprise agreement with us, your EES agreement, then you're going to have the ability to provide your entire faculty, staff, and all of your students with up to 5 copies of Pro Plus for their PCs or Macs, for those desktops, as well as 5 copies for their tablets, mobile devices, those types of things. So they're going to have the ability to install this on all their own personal devices, as well as they can actually use those same licenses if they wish on the institutionally owned devices, which is what we're going to focus on today, which is really on how to deploy this out to institutionally owned devices. The second thing that you'll want to note is about the activation. So there is no KMS server, there are no MAC keys. They're going to activate with the same credentials, username and password, that they use to log into Office 365, which is what we refer to as the Azure Active Directory credentials. So which typically you're going to synchronize with your Active Directory. You don't have to, but most of my customers synchronize their on-prem Active Directory with their Azure Active Directory, which is the back end of Office 365, right? So that's the great thing. There are no other keys. The user only has to know their username and password, which is probably the same one they log into their computer with, and definitely the same one that they log into Office 365 with. So that makes that all very simple to do. In the requirements section down here, we talk about the fact that the requirements are fairly simple to do this. They've got to have Windows 7 or newer for this click to run, right? The Pro Plus to work. It is, you do have group policy support with it, so you can manage much of this software through group policy. One of the questions that comes up a lot, and I'll just address it now, is if you have been using the, I wanted to say it's the Office administrative template. It's been a year since I was doing this myself, or probably 2 years really, and so I'm having a hard time with that exact name. But the little toolkit that you use to customize Office before deploying the MSI, you can manage almost all of those same features through group policy settings today. So because you don't have that toolkit with Pro Plus. You can automate the deployment of this. As a matter of fact, you're going to find out it's crazy simple. We're going to get into that in just a minute. And you do have selective application installation. This is a big one, right? We didn't have this initially. So if you were one of the early evaluators of click to run Office Pro Plus deployment, then what you saw was it was an all or nothing. You had to install all of the Pro Plus suite or none. And so we've adjusted that. And so I will show you, even as we go through this, how you can just change a simple XML file and automatically exclude things like, let's say you didn't want to install InfoPath or maybe Access on certain machines. As we deal with solid state machines and storage is a premium on the local machine, especially student machines in the lower cost regions, you may choose, hey, I only want to deploy Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. So you can absolutely do that by excluding the other apps. So those are all important things that we're going to work through as we go. Move on to our next one here. So I think this slide is just to show you that we are constantly innovating, right? I talked about this iterative innovation. And so amongst all the noise, essentially, that's in this slide, what I really want you to see, I want to call your attention to is the this right here, this blue line that comes across, right, as well as this red line up here. So the blue line is the volume license bits that you've probably been working with for quite some time. So back in February of 2013, we released the bits for Office 365, or I'm sorry, for Office Professional Plus 2013. And as a result, we're still using those same bits that we initially deployed and just applying layered patches to that. Alternatively, though, we released Office 365 Pro Plus, and now what we've been doing is continuing to release other innovations based upon that. So it's actually the Office 365 Pro Plus licenses that are utilized for all of the mobile apps, even the Android and iPhone apps, those types of things. So a good example of that is I work with a lot of folks in education right now on OneNote. And so you can install OneNote for free on any platform that you wish. But to license the advanced version, right? So it's like the freemium model. It's free to install. You can use it with all of your personal accounts like OneDrive, those things. But when you want to use it in an enterprise type mode, like OneDrive for Business, you have to have a license, which we provide. Again, if you license Office for your faculty and staff. And so all it takes to apply that license is you simply log in with it. So all of those things that are listed here, including that, are part of the innovation that we have created for Office 365 and specifically Office 365 Pro Plus over the past 2 years. So you can see that we're continuing to increase that cadence over time, and we will keep adding more and more features to the evergreen subscription version of Pro Plus. So that's one of the reasons it's a tremendous value to you. Another reason why we find that people consider it to be great value is because they want to ensure that the same version of Office exists on the school computers as what exists on people's home machines. So as it's becoming commonplace to simply have a subscription to Office, and more importantly, because your school district is providing the license to that for them, right? Because they can install up to 5 PCs and 5 tablets and mobile devices, right? So now you've provided the latest version of Office to all of them. And so most schools want to make sure that they're providing all the same level of innovation on campus as what their faculty, staff, and students have on their personal or BYOD devices. So I'm going to kind of step forward here as we talk about BYOD and kind of how that works and the difference between it and what we're going to talk about with doing a deployment. Pardon me, I had to get a drink there. So in order for an end user to install Office 365 Pro Plus to their personal machines, they just log into portal.office.com, which is how they get into Office 365 today, right? They're going to use their Azure Active Directory credentials, which again are synced to your local AD in most cases. So they're just going to log into portal.office.com, and then they from there can install the Office suite. And so that Office suite at that point is all maintained by Office 365, right? We have a content delivery network at Microsoft, which most of you are familiar with, right? It's the Microsoft Updates site, and we utilize those same tool sets to be able to push updates down to the individual users. The Office 365 Pro Plus suite manages its updates automatically as the key on those personal machines. But when we move into managed computers inside of your environment, that's not typically the approach that everyone wants to take. And so we have two different options there today. One is that they can do a self-install, just like they do on a BYOD machine, right? But in order to do that, they have to have admin rights on their local machine, which is fine. If you provide that, then they can do that. That's no problem. And we did launch a blog post, which is one of the articles that I put in the Word document that I was telling you guys about at the beginning of this. One of those articles actually I think both of them, talk about the fact that we are adding additional insights as to what has been provisioned for a user, and I have a feeling it's going to allow you to do some things like deprovision a machine or something from a user's license. But today, the end user has all that view themselves. Now, it'll be at the Ignite conference when we announce any further information beyond what's in those blog posts. And that occurs in just a couple of weeks. So you guys would know about this before you were even able to test and then deploy this. So there are some new management insights that are coming with that from a self-install. But what we're going to focus on here is more on deploying with the Office Deployment Toolkit. That's what ODT stands for, is the Office Deployment Toolkit. And I'm actually going to bring that website up and just show you real quick what you're looking for, so that you know you're on the right site and you know you're there. Because this is going to be an important key. You can just go to Bing, or if there are other search engines you prefer, you can use those. But you just type in Office Deployment Tool or Office Deployment Toolkit, either way, and it will be the very first thing that pops up. And so I can just show you. I just type in Office Deployment Tool. It's the very first link that's there. It loads up to our typical downloads site. And you'll want to click download, and it'll pull down an executable file, which after the presentation portion here, I'm actually going to expand that and show it to you a little bit. And the most important thing here, other than just downloading it in general, is under this details section, you're going to find some extraordinarily helpful links. You will want to take a look at these, like how to customize Office 365 click to run, or how to customize just the configuration file, some of those things, which will make more sense in just a moment. But you're going to definitely want to keep track of those links that are in there. Okay, so jump back to our little presentation here, and when we go to deploy with the Office Deployment Toolkit, what's going to happen is we're going to first have to download the latest build of Office 365 ProPlus. And then we can have the choice of whether or not updates are applied automatically. And then even if they are applied automatically, are those going to come from our Microsoft Content Delivery Network, or do you have a local file share you want them to come from? You can also, if you choose not to use the built-in automatic updates, you can control that yourself through SCCM. You can push out updates. You can use group policy. There are all kinds of different ways, depending on what your tool set is, as to how you can keep that updated. And I'm going to show you how that all works, because believe it or not, it's actually very simple. Hey, I forgot, I guess this is right here in it. So yeah, so there's the download center. I think I just showed you that. Got ahead of myself. When you download the Office Deployment tool, what you're going to find out is when you expand it, it contains exactly two files. That's it. It has a configuration.xml file and a setup.exe file. Now, when you run setup /?, which is the first thing that you do when you have an executable, I think for most of us who've been nerds for a while, that's the first thing we do to find out what are our options, what are the switches we can use, and you will quickly determine that there are three. I can use it to either download, configure, or package. Now, the packager, I'm not going to get into that at all today. If you use AppV, you can absolutely use the packager feature to create a package that's ready to be deployed through AppV, through SCCM as part of that. And that works great. You shouldn't have any trouble with that. If you do, you're always welcome to get a hold of me, and I'll answer any questions that I can for you. Today, though, we're going to focus more on the download and configure side of it, because I find that's what, once you master those two pieces, then this is actually quite a simple process. So this is what the XML file actually looks like when you open it up. So I don't know if I can see if I can zoom in here a little bit for you guys on this. So the XML file is really quite simple and straightforward. So I can choose, this is, when it comes to me, you'll notice a lot of the comments, by the way, if you're not like a XML nerd, or if you don't have a lot of experience with HTML, some of this might not look, it might not work right away until you realize you have to remove these comments that are right here. So the opening bracket with the exclamation point, double dash, and then all the way down, you also have to remove the double dash and the closing bracket. What that means is simply everything between those two markers is a comment. And so you'll see that on each of these lines down here. So any of the lines of this configuration file you want to use, you'll need to first go in and remove those bookends for the comment. So that's really important. Once we get past that, though, what you'll see is essentially I have the ability to define the source path and the whether it's going to be 32-bit or 64-bit edition. Now, just a reminder, if you go and look at any of the Microsoft best practices, it is a best practice to deploy 32-bit version of Office, even to 64-bit machines. Typically, the only reason to deploy 64-bit version of Office is if you're running extremely large spreadsheets, those types of things. And the last time I looked, I think the actual recommendation for that was to fix your spreadsheet and go back to a 32-bit version. And I think that primarily has to do with compatibility with a lot of the Office apps and things that are available, plugins and the like, right? So what we're going to talk about first is, as we looked at this, remember I said that there was download and configure. So at first I'm going to talk about download and why and what you can do with that. So I'm going to grab my pen here, and of course it messes up my ability to be zoomed in when I do that. Let me see. So I guess I can't use the pen and be zoomed in. I hope you guys can see that little hand cursor there. If you can't see my little hand cursor, let me know and I'll find a different way to do this. But the source path, when we're talking about it from a download standpoint, that's telling it where to put the downloaded file at. And what's going to get downloaded into this source path is a roughly 1 gigabyte file that's going to be the latest version of the Office Pro Plus. So I'm just telling it where on my network to put that. That could be a folder on my C drive. It could be a network share that I have write access to, anything like that. And then again, 64, 32-bit version. The product ID, Office 365 Pro Plus Retail. That's important because, as you can see here, you also can use this for Visio Pro and Project, right? All three of those are click-to-run products, and so they use this exact same Office deployment toolkit, which is really handy if you use any of those tools in your environment. Now, the language ID, I actually believe that English US is the default, but if you're like me and you've been installing software for a while now, you've learned that is not a default you want to mess with. I always put in the language anytime that I can, so I suggest keeping that in just to ensure you have the right language. And then we'll move down into here to some of the more or less common things that are in there. So updates enabled true update path. So this one is extremely important, not for the download part of it, right? When we're running it with download, but instead when we're doing configure. So I should be very clear here. The way that you do this, I feel like maybe I've confused this issue slightly. So let me see if I can clarify here just a moment. I can go in here to my command line, right? And all I'm going to do is type in setup.exe/download, right? And then then space, and the name of my XML file. Now in this case it's configure.xml, right? So all I've typed is setup.exe/download configure.xml, and then it's going to read that XML, it's going to go download it and react accordingly to what I have in that XML file. I can use the same XML. I would not, though. I would then take that XML, I would make a copy of it, and I would call it install.xml, right? And then once I've downloaded this and I'm ready to install this, I'm going to use the exact same command, except I'm going to change the switch to be configure, and then I'm going to use a different XML file. Index is not what I wanted until I wrote web pages for a lot of years. I apologize for that. So we'll call this install. So setup.exe/configure install.xml. And forgive my horrific handwriting here on this tablet, but the reason why is I don't want to use the same install file because I don't want to accidentally forget to change it from one time to another. And you're actually going to find out that you can very easily, as you start looking through how to customize this, I also have a uninstall.xml file because, believe it or not, to uninstall Office, it's the exact same process, setup.exe/configure and then the name of your XML file. In my case, uninstall.xml. So now, without further ado here, I'm going to zoom back in on this configuration and now talk a little bit about what is different about the configuration file when I'm going from download to install or configure mode, right? So I'm still going to have the same section up here at the top most likely, right? I'm still going to have I can have the source path or I can leave it out, but if I don't put it in, then it's going to pull it from the internet to do the initial install, right? If I leave that source path in, then it's going to pull the initial installation from the path that I put in there. And then as I work down through this, I want to come down into this other section down here where it talks about updates, and I can disable automatic updates. So that doesn't mean that you can't update Office Pro Plus. It just means that it's not going to be an automatic process for Office Pro Plus to do it. Now you can use Group Policy or System Center Configuration Manager or whatever tool you use to push updates out. As a matter of fact, a remote command line argument will do it because it's just all you're doing is pushing setup and that XML file. And then this is telling it where to get the updates from. And we're going to talk in a little bit about why that's important, that updates don't have to come from the same place as the install. But essentially it's going to be because I want to give you a tool or a capability to be able to deploy in validation stages. So let's say you have a validator group. I want you to be able to deploy to them first, and then 2 weeks later be able to deploy to the rest of your network without any problem. So in the next line, we talk about display level, and this is really about turning off all of the acknowledgement stuff during the installation so that the end user doesn't see anything while it's being deployed. And then we'll move into logging. This is totally optional. You don't have to do logging. I really suggest, though, when you're initially testing at the very least, to set up the logging so that you can look at it. If you're having any trouble, you've got something to go and reference and see what might have occurred. And then as we move into the property name for auto activate, really what this is about is let's say that you have single sign-on set up. Remember how I pointed out that when I use Office 365 Pro Plus, I don't have any type of a license key, KMS or MAC key. Instead, I'm using my credentials. So what happens is the first time that I log into Office 365, it asks me for my username and password, and then it stores that. And as long as I'm connected to the internet at least once every 30 days when I log into that thing, it's going to go back in every time that it connects up. It's going to say, does this person with these credentials have a valid license to Office 365 Pro Plus? And if I do, then no problem. It's going to sort of renew that or reset that 30-day countdown piece. But the auto activate, you can avoid having to ever type in your credentials and even click the agree to the EULA or the activation piece or anything, because what you can do with that is if you have ADFS in place, single sign-on on-prem, then actually Office will automatically grab the credentials from your logged-in user and authenticate, or attempt to at least authenticate Office against those same credentials in Office 365. So that's quite beautiful. If you've got Active Directory synchronization set up with AD on-prem and Active Directory or Azure Active Directory in the cloud, then you have ADFS that's running for single sign-on in your district, and this all just sort of happens magically. Essentially, there appears to be no licensing, no logins, anything for end users. Where that becomes really valuable is when we start talking about deployment into a lab environment. So if you have shared use labs, there is another switch that you can put into this XML file, which is in the documentation, that's on, remember, on this page right here under the details section. You have some links that are there about how to customize this XML file, and they go into great detail. And one of the things that you can do there is add shared use activation. And so if you have machines like lab machines, carts of labs, that type of stuff, you can actually go ahead and put in another line in here that tells it to turn on a little registry bit that makes it shared use. And then it doesn't decrement from that student's machine or their license at all. So it won't use one of those 5 for that student. And that has a great deal of value. I will tell you though, this is, and I hope this changes soon, but I always want to call out what the caveats are up front. One place where Office Pro Plus today may not be the best fit for you, and you should consider this in your deployment, where I think volume licensing is still the best place to go, is if you are using laptop carts where students don't grab the same machine on a regular basis, they're just grabbing whatever machine's available to them, then I really think staying with volume licensing is probably going to be your best approach. And the reason why, in lower grades. Now, as you get into 5th grade and above, that's really not an issue at all. We've had great success with it. But below the 5th grade, we find the amount of time that it takes sometimes to just add that extra layer of the user having to add their username and password when they go to open Office can create some satisfaction issues with your teachers and the amount of class time that's spent. So that's just a tip from me to you. It's up to you. I have some districts who tell me it's not a problem at all. We're constantly logging into web pages, everything else, and the kids have gotten really good at it. So if that's the case with you, that's great. At least it's the exact same username and password that they use for everything else on your campus, so they should be very confident with it. So I just want to point that out. So lots of things that you can do there to customize that. Hey, look, a whole slide on shared. I should have paid attention to what was coming next. So shared computer activation is supported. As I said, it wasn't originally. It is now. I think I went over most of this. Supports the deployment of Office 365 ProPlus to shared machines. Whoops. I apologize. I attempted to use my pen there. Shared machines. It does not count against their 5 devices. Deployment is supported using the same Office Deployment Toolkit as we looked at. You just use the exact same XML file that we've been talking about. And so what's kind of cool about that, what I would do, my recommendation, by the way, is that you just, how I had the install.xml file, you would have an install SCA for shared use activation, right? So install SCA.xml or whatever you choose to call it. But I would just create a separate XML file, and then you still have the same deployment, and all you do is change the command that you're running against that machine so that it knows which XML file to use. It requires a simple line addition. Yep, best user experience with integrated authentication, what we just talked about, which is really something like ADFS, or Active Directory Federated Services. And that is the XML line that you have to add to that file. So it's really very, very simple. Shared computer licensing on. I like that. I like intuitive. I like simple. I like easy to remember and easy to work with. So as I'm fond of telling people, I'm not lazy. I'm just highly efficient. Whoops, looks like I switched away there for a second. Just want to make sure nobody had any questions. Looks like we're still going good. Now, remember, as we go through this, guys, if you have any questions, feel free, interject, put them in the chat window. I'll see it flashing and eventually pull it up, or just take yourself off mute and yell at me to make me stop. Office 365 Pro Plus configuration scenarios. We have the sneaker net, which is actually, believe it or not, one of my favorites. There have been numerous times in my career where I had to go grab like a a cart of laptops that kept going back to sleep on me. I couldn't get them all to stay on long enough to deploy anything to them. So you know what? Sometimes it was just easier to take a half dozen USB drives, drop the source files onto it, and go out and install it. So you can absolutely still do that because again, you're just running a command. You're just changing that source path, right? Pretty simple. Source path is on the USB drive, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. All right, moving on to cloud install with cloud updates. So this is where I'm going to just have them run I'm going to run the installer. It's going to download it from the internet, and then it's going to automatically get all of its updates from the internet as well. Some people say, well, why would I ever do that on campus? Well, there are actually a number of reasons. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a very small bus barn that we worked with, and while that was still on our network, it really wasn't something that was necessarily getting any. It was going across the internet to get there, and across a VPN. And I had some remote schools in the rural areas that were across DSL lines with VPN connectivity. And it actually made more sense from a network bandwidth standpoint to just have that small bus barn, which had internet connectivity and no servers, to just pull straight from the content delivery network. And what's great is I could do that with just those subset of machines, but then I can also take and at the smaller rural schools, I could just have a network share that they were coming from, and at my primary locations and buildings, I could utilize my SCCM deployment points. So you have all those same capabilities to you. And then we get into the intranet install, right, where I'm going to install it from the local intranet, but then have you be able to pull updates automatically from the web. So you can see here, basically, I can mix and match any way that I want to. So your enterprise software distribution system, right, ESD, you just have it run setup.exe, which is, essentially System Center is going to push out this whole thing, and you'll be good, and it can do it. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Here are some great resources for getting started. And so most of these resources are available from that same page I showed you before when you click on details and expand it on the deployment toolkit. And I can post those too. I'm going to get into in just a moment what SCCM deployments kind of look like. Are updates and fixes and patches with Office 365 the same thing? Hey, Stan, great question, man. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to switch out of this presentation for as a matter of fact, we're just done with the presentation, if that's good with you guys, and we're going to move into more of a discussion here. Let me get out of that. I'll discard all of my changes there. Okay, so Stan asked the question, as you guys probably saw, which is, are updates and critical patches, all the same thing? And the answer today is yes. So what happens is we have a TechNet article, which may have been in that list. Let me look here real quick, that talks about all of the different builds that are out. So let me just grab Bing here real quick, and we'll go to Office ProPlus. Maybe I should have pulled that up otherwise. I have that information over here in a OneNote document that I'll pull up. Give me just a second here. I got it handy, I'm sure. There we go. OneNote is a wonderful tool for storing great information like this, right? Wait, that's the download piece version. Here we go. So what's happening right now is I'm pulling up a website to show you guys every different version of Office Pro Plus that's available. So at this link, which I'm going to throw into the chat session here, you can actually see every version of Click to Run that we have deployed here, right? And so you can actually from right here go and find the version number and download it You can reference that directly in the XML file, so you can tell it which of these versions to pull down if you want to. But what these are is when we release a new build, it includes all of the latest innovations and all of the patches. So currently you have to, if you decide not to move forward with, let's say, the new build that came out this last month, you choose not to install it and you stay on a previous build, then you're not getting the security patches. Now, that said, we have a couple of blog posts, which are what I put in that Word document, that are talking about what's coming up. And one of those things that's going to be coming out is we are going to separate out those two things so that, I think it must be in the other blog here, so that you can deploy patches, critical patches, even if you've chosen not to move to the next version of Office Pro Plus. So I think that's really important to note. A couple of other things I just want to mention, I'll switch back over to the questions that are there, is better network traffic management. We are going to start using bits to handle the traffic management in the background, so we can kind of throttle that a little bit, even if you do use the content delivery network. The distribution management, so building it into Config Manager a little bit better. Today, I built a lab for this, and I actually have lab notes. If anybody is interested in me sending you those lab notes, I will, which are step-by-step how to build an SCCM lab to deploy Office Pro Plus. But I'm happy to send it to any of you who want it. But I cannot stress enough, this is for a lab environment. This is not intended for production use. So you just tell me in the chat window you want it, and I'll send it to you. Well, actually, probably send me an email. Let me put my contact information in here. Send me an email, because I don't necessarily have all of your contact information after this meeting. So feel free, send me an email, and I'll send you back the lab notes if you want those. You can also all reach out to me on Twitter, at Preston Pinier. Again, I'm efficient, not lazy. I was too efficient to come up with a catchy, cute little Twitter name. But just coming back to this, the flexible update management, we kind of talked about that. That's kind of where we were talking about the feature updates, separating feature updates from bug fixes, and simplified activation management. So giving you a better view, I mentioned that before, from the Office 365 admin portal as to which devices have been set. So with that, I'm going to switch back over here and see Daniel Ray. We have a lot of Office 2007 in our environment. Could we use the deployment tool to uninstall that as well before deploying the Office 365 Click to Run? Another great question. This is neat. I'm glad you asked that. So no, that's not the neat part. But the neat part is you can actually have Office Pro Plus installed along with Office 2007. So they can run side by side if you want to. You can only have one version of Click to Run installed, right? So you can't have multiple versions of Office 365 Pro Plus, but you can run Pro Plus beside the volume licensed bits of Office. There actually have been a few people who've given me reasons why they've done that in their organization, or at least left part of Office 2010 or 2013 behind. Uninstalling Office 2007, though, it is not able to do that. So moving on here, let's see, Angela had another question. If that didn't fully answer it and you have other questions, just put it in there, Daniel, and I'll respond to it further. Angela, can we blend Office 365 with Office 2013? Hey, I was premonitive when I answered that. We like using Office 2013, but want to use Office 365 as another tool to teach our students. Also, we plan to go to Office 365 or Exchange Online for email. Is this plausible? Hey, not only is it plausible, I think it's a great option for you. Why wouldn't you, right? As somebody who spent a lot of years managing and maintaining Exchange boxes, man, I love Microsoft Exchange. It is the absolute, hands down, best unified communication tool I've seen. I love it. It's awesome. But it's also quite time consuming and somewhat difficult to manage, and in particular it's very difficult to troubleshoot sometimes when you have significant issues in your environment. So by moving to Office 365 for Exchange, using Exchange Online. It'll handle all of your mail at no cost to you. Exchange Online is available to all of your users as part of the standard what we call E1 licensing, or the basic free to education licensing. So you absolutely can move it there. And I would encourage Angela, just send me an email. I'll be more than happy to chat with you and help you with the steps that you need to go through to sort of get migrated over there or get moved over there. The question you had about blending Office 365 with Office 2013, probably you can certainly do that. I've not seen anybody who actually went ahead and did that in practice, to be honest with you, because when you push out Office 365 Pro Plus, what you're going to find out is, just to bring my PowerPoint over here, when I go in here and I look, so this is Pro Plus, and if I go to account here, what you're going to see is I have all the same products as what's in Office 2013. As a matter of fact, I'm still on version 15, right? I have newer builds, so I have the newer innovation on top of it. But typically what we end up finding out is, so far everyone I've worked with, if they had Office 2013 in place, they end up replacing that with Office Pro Plus. Now, 2010 and perhaps 2007, but with Office 2010, I definitely have seen people who had reasons that they really wanted to keep certain aspects of Office because they had other add-ins or things or macros that were written specifically for it, that type of stuff. Which brings me to the next comment I want to make sure that I bring up. Keep asking questions, guys. I'm going to talk right up to the end of the hour unless you ask me questions, because I have so much stuff I just love to tell you guys about. But one of the other pieces that's there is around the fact that, as we've announced in these blog posts, again, they're in that Word document that I put in the link to begin with. In those blog posts, one of the things that we really talk about is that you can now start using, I guess it's this other one, here we go. The Office 2016 preview is available. You can start working with it. And so for people who are using Pro Plus, that actually is going to be just sort of another update to it, right? It'll come out as an update to Pro Plus, even with the new changes that we're going to announce at Ignite, and we'll get lots more details about what's in these blog posts. Wow, I think I may have actually lost my little bit of my train of thought. Oh, you can get Office 2016 now, start working with it from a preview standpoint today. But when it comes out, you will still be able to use volume licensing with it, is my understanding. So I think that's something I think is very important. Let's see, what else do we have over here? Does Office 365 include the Movie Maker tool? No. So Movie Maker is not part of Office and hasn't been. It's actually part of, I believe it's called the Windows Essentials tool set or something like that. But it is completely separate from Microsoft Office. Now, it's still available and you can still deploy it, but it's not part of the Pro Plus subscription or part of the Office suite in particular. So let's see, what else do I want to make sure that I tell you guys about what's happening? I've got the notes that I'm happy to send you guys if you want to start playing with it, deploying it. You deploy it with just the setup.exe files. You've got these two blog posts that are here. Let me pull up these resources. There was one other one I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys. Okay, right here. Well, I'll copy the hyperlink then and cheat if I have to. But if you don't already have this in place, then I think this is something you're going to want to look at, which is Active Directory Federated Services, or ADFS, and how it may be of value to you. If you're a relatively small school district, this may not be applicable to you. Like in my district, I didn't put this in place because I was using for the most part the same username and password everywhere for most of my users. And actually, as Microsoft moves more into Azure Active Directory with Windows 10 in particular, you can now actually even use your Azure Active Directory credentials to log directly into Windows 10. But that's another session for another day. So we'll come to that, but you can, this link right here will take you to, that still took me to the wrong place, didn't it? But that link that was in that PowerPoint slide will take you to more information about using ADFS with Office 365. So with that, guys, I'm wrapped up here. Are there any last minute questions or anything that you guys want to talk about? I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to stick around for the last 4 minutes here. And if you have additional questions or you specifically want me to send you something, I can certainly do that. But let me put a stop on this recording.